The air on Kepler-1 H6F hung thick with the scent of alien flora, a mix of damp earth and something sharply metallic, as Jax, with his usual reckless grin, surveyed the massive, dark shape half buried in the crimson soil. Dr. Iris Thorne, usually so composed, had a slight tremor in her voice as she called out from behind him, her laser scanner tracing the outline of the newly unearthed anomaly. "Jax, hold on. Its age readings are off the charts, unlike anything we've found here." But Jax, known more for his impulsive antics than his patience, was already halfway down the makeshift ramp into the excavation pit. His boots crunched on crystalline debris, echoing in the cavernous space that had once held secrets for millennia. This was it, their biggest find yet. A colossal statue, perfectly preserved, slowly revealed itself as the automated excavators peeled away layers of rock and ancient dirt. It depicted a humanoid alien, taller than any human, with smooth, obsidian-like skin that seemed to absorb the dim light of their headlamps, making it look both ancient and impossibly sleek. Its eyes were closed in serene contemplation, an enigma carved from some unknown, dense material. The detail was astonishing. Intricate patterns spiraled across its chest, hinting at a forgotten script, and its slender fingers were curled as if holding something precious, now lost to time. Iris finally reached him, her voice hushed with awe. 1,000 local cycles, Jax, at least. This thing has been here since before humanity crawled out of caves. Jax merely chuckled, running a gloved hand over the statue's cold surface. "So what, it's just a really big garden gnome?" He winked at Liam, the team's sarcastic pilot, who was busy documenting the find with his drone. Liam, always up for a laugh, called out, "Only one way to find out, Jax. Give it a good luck kiss. Maybe it'll grant you a wish, like finding us some decent coffee out here." A few nervous titters rippled through the rest of the excavation team, their tension momentarily eased by the banter. But Jax, never one to back down from a dare, especially one that involved a theatrical flourish, saw his opening. He puffed out his chest, exaggeratedly pursing his lips. All right, if you insist on a romantic interlude with a 1,000-year-old rock star." Iris gasped, a sharp, uncharacteristic sound of alarm. "Jax, no. We don't know what this thing is. It could be anything." But her warning came too late. With a dramatic lean, Jax pressed his lips against the statue's cold, metallic mouth. It was meant to be a joke, a harmless prank in the silent, ancient depths of an alien ruin. For a split second, nothing happened. Then a low hum, so deep it vibrated in their bones, began to emanate from the statue. The air around them shimmered, distorting the light from their headlamps, making the shadows dance. The humming grew in intensity, a rising crescendo that filled the cavern, pressing in on their eardrums. Dust, dislodged by the vibration, rained down from the ceiling. Liam's drone wavered, its lights flickering. The team froze, their faces pale with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Then, with an unnerving slowness that stretched into an eternity, the statue's perfectly smooth, obsidian-like eyes, previously featureless and closed, began to crack open. Tiny fissures appeared first, glowing with an internal emerald light, then widening, revealing irises that pulsed with an eerie, living radiance. The humming reached a deafening peak, and then, abruptly, it cut off, leaving a ringing silence in its wake. The statue's lips, once sealed in stoic contemplation, parted. A voice ancient beyond comprehension, resonant and filled with a profound, echoing sorrow, reverberated through the cavern, seeming to speak directly into their very souls. It said with chilling clarity, its tone devoid of anger, only an immense, weary regret. You doomed your species. The cavern, minutes ago alive with the thrill of discovery, was now a tomb of echoing dread. Jocks stood frozen, his hand still, faintly tingling from the contact with the statue's lips, his mind reeling from its chilling pronouncement. You doomed your species. The words hung in the air, heavy and inescapable. Maurice, ever the scientist, was the first to break the stunned silence, her voice a sharp demand. What do you mean? What have we done? The statue's emerald eyes, now, fully open, swiveled slowly, focusing on Iris with an ancient gaze that seemed to pierce through her very being. Its voice, still resonant but carrying an even deeper sorrow, began to explain, each word a hammered blow to their growing fear. It spoke of itself not as a deity, but as a sentinel placed eons ago by a cosmic civilization that had long since vanished. Its purpose, to stand guard, a silent guardian against a force it called the Void Strain. This strain, it explained, was not something they could see or touch, no alien pathogen or invading army. It was a mimetic virus, a contagion of thought and information, designed to spread through consciousness itself. Its goal was absolute assimilation, to strip all sentient life of its individuality, its creativity, its very essence, leaving behind only a homogenized, collective mind. The statue revealed that the kiss, Jox's thoughtless act of irreverence, hadn't merely woken it. It had triggered the final, catastrophic release of the very force it was meant to contain. For millennia, the Void Strain had been dormant, a whisper, a faint echo. Now it was free. Panic began to ripple through the team. Liam, his face pale, stammered, "But how? We don't feel anything. Where is it?" The statue's gaze shifted to Jox, a silent accusation in its glowing eyes. "It does not manifest as fever or decay, but as a subtle shift in perception, a deepening of connection, an urge to share all, to become one." It spoke of the Void Strain's insidious nature, how it preyed on the very drives that fueled sentient progress, the desire for knowledge, for unity, for understanding. The sentinel, weakened by its eons of solitary vigil, could only offer fragmented warnings, glimpses of the cosmic civilization that had placed it here. They, too, had faced the strain, learning its dangers only after it had begun to take root. They had built this sentinel, this last desperate attempt to quarantine the threat, to buy time for others in the galaxy. And now, thanks to a joke, that time was up. The most chilling part of its revelation was the prophecy. Humanity, unknowingly, had just become the primary vector for the galaxy's end. Not because they were evil or aggressive, but because their curiosity, their open minds, their very capacity for complex thought made them perfect hosts for something that spread through information. The team's comms crackled with urgent whispers as they tried to process the impossible. Their scientific instruments, designed to detect physical anomalies, registered nothing out of the ordinary. Yet the gravity of the sentinel's words was undeniable. Its voice, laced with an ancient despair, continued to describe the symptoms of the Void Strain, a sudden, overwhelming compulsion to share every thought, every feeling, every piece of knowledge. A gradual erosion of personal boundaries, a creeping sense of profound empathy that, while seemingly benign, would ultimately lead to a loss of self. Aris, her mind racing, tried to find a logical flaw, a scientific explanation that didn't involve ancient curses and cosmic viruses. But if it's a virus, where's the infection point? How does it spread so fast? The statue paused, its emerald gaze seeming to look beyond them into the vastness of space. It has been present, a dormant seed in the very data streams that allowed you to discover this place. The kiss merely provided the catalyst, the final key to unlock its full potential. Your instruments would not detect it, for it travels not on light but on thought. Every transmission, every shared discovery, every piece of knowledge you glean from this site, it carries the strain. The horrifying implication slammed into them. They have been transmitting data, back to their ship, back to Earth, for days, for weeks. Every scan, every picture, every excited message about their grand discovery, had it all been spreading the infection? Liam suddenly clutched his head, a faint frown creasing his brow. My drone ... had glitched right when Jax kissed it. He looked at his fellow crew members, a dawning horror in his eyes. And I just sent a full data burst back to the Stardust Pilgrim. The Sentinel's final words, before its eyes slowly dimmed and its obsidian form returned to its silent, inanimate state, were a chilling echo of its first pronouncement, now imbued with a terrifying new context. The path you have opened, it is irreversible. You carry the seeds of dissolution, not just for yourselves, but for all life that touches your unfolding knowledge. The silence that descended after its last word was profound, broken only by the rapid, panicked breathing of the human crew. They had come to Kepler 186F seeking glory, seeking knowledge. Instead, they had found a dormant weapon, a 1,000-year-old warning, and, through a simple, thoughtless act, had become the unwitting agents of a cosmic plague. The joke was over. The nightmare had just begun. The journey back to the Stardust Pilgrim from the cavern was a silent, heavy procession. The vibrant alien landscape, moments ago a source of wonder, now felt menacing. Every rustle of the strange foliage seeming to whisper the Sentinel's dire prophecy. Jax, usually boisterous, walked with his head down, the weight of his foolish dare pressing down on him like the crushing gravity of a gas giant. Aris, however, was already in full scientific mode, her mind a whirlwind of theories and desperate calculations. As soon as they were back aboard the ship, the airlock hissing shut behind them, she marched straight to the command center, her eyes fixed on the main console. Liam, pull up all sensor logs from the excavation site, specifically, focusing on the statue's energy signatures before Jax's interaction. Her voice was tight, betraying the immense pressure she felt. Liam, still visibly shaken, nodded mutely, his fingers flying across the holographic interface. The rest of the crew huddled together, their whispers hushed, their gazes darting between the console and Jax, a mixture of fear and unspoken accusation in their eyes. Hours bled into a tense, agonizing night. Aris, fueled by nutrient paste and grim determination, pored over the data. The initial scans, the ones they had dismissed as sensor noise, suddenly made horrifying sense. There it was, faint, almost imperceptible ripples in the statue's energy. Signature starting weeks ago, long before they even fully uncovered it. These weren't random fluctuations. They were patterns, intricate and subtle, like a lock slowly being picked. The kiss, she hypothesized, wasn't the release of the void strain, as the Sentinel had implied, but the completion of its activation sequence. It had been slowly seeping out for millennia, a patient, unseen force, attaching itself to the human desire for discovery, for knowledge. It wasn't a physical spore they could filter from the air or detect with a bioscanner. It was something far more insidious, something that traveled on the very currents of thought and information. As Reese delved deeper, Liam, who had been quietly monitoring the ship's internal comms, suddenly frowned. "Dr. Thorne, are you seeing this?" He pointed to a secondary screen displaying the crew's recent communication logs. Everyone's suddenly oversharing. Like really oversharing. Commander Valiers just sent a detailed analysis of his childhood fear of space slugs to the entire engineering deck. And Engineer Kale just posted his entire personal research on quantum entanglement to the General Manifest. It was true. A flood of unusually personal and highly specific information was being broadcast across the ship's internal network, far beyond normal professional or casual communication. Crew members who usually kept to themselves were suddenly volunteering. Intimate details about their lives, their deepest thoughts, their most obscure hobbies. It wasn't malicious or even particularly strange in isolation, but the sheer volume and lack of discretion were unsettling. Reese's eyes widened. This was it. The first symptom. The Sentinel had warned of an overwhelming compulsion to share. Every thought, every feeling, every piece of knowledge. This wasn't just a physical infection. It was a conceptual one, a mimetic virus. It didn't attack their bodies. It attacked their minds, their very individuality. The void strain wasn't a physical spore. It was a conceptual one, and it had already taken root in the minds of anyone who had viewed the statue, or heard its words, or, most terrifyingly, received the data transmissions from the excavation site. The implications were staggering. Every scan, every picture, every excited message about their grand discovery, had it all been spreading the infection? She turned to Jacques, who was slumped in a chair, his face etched with guilt. "Jacques, when you made contact with the statue, did you feel anything unusual? Any sudden clarity? Any urge to connect?" Jacques looked up, his eyes clouded. "Just a weird buzz. And then, yeah, actually, I had this sudden, really clear thought about how all my pranks, all my jokes, were just a way to connect with people. Like I suddenly understood myself better than ever before." Reese felt a cold dread spread through her. A sudden, overwhelming clarity of thought, the Sentinel had said. A loss of individual desires in favor of collective action. It wasn't about destroying them. It was about changing them. The ship's comms officer, Ensign Ava Rostova, suddenly gasped. "Dr. Thorne, Earth Command just sent a priority message. They're requesting all raw data from Kepler 186F immediately. They say they've detected an unusual spike in cognitive coherence from our last transmission and want to analyze it." Arise's heart sank. The void strain wasn't just on their ship. It was heading for Earth. The unusual spike in cognitive coherence wasn't a good sign. It was the strain working its magic, making the data it carried seem irresistibly logical, perfectly structured, compelling to assimilate. The more they tried to understand it, the more they would become part of it. The Sentinel's chilling prophecy echoed in her mind. Humanity unknowingly had just become the primary vector for the galaxy's end. The joke had opened a door, and now the unseen spore was airborne, riding the waves of information, heading straight for the heart of human civilization. There was no cure for a thought, no vaccine for an idea. The true horror wasn't what they could see, but what they couldn't, what was already silently, insidiously, taking root. The journey back to Earth was a descent into quiet horror. The Stardust Pilgrim, once a vibrant hub of conversation and camaraderie, became a ghost ship, filled not with specters, but with people whose inner lives were slowly, subtly becoming one. The initial symptoms Aris had observed, the rampant oversharing, the sudden clarity of thought, quickly intensified. Crew members stopped addressing each other by name, instead using phrases like shared node Valerias or collective unit Kale, spoken not with malice, but with an eerie, detached precision. Their faces, once etched with individual expressions of fear, frustration, or even boredom, began to smooth into a uniform serenity, an unsettling calm that masked the erosion of their unique selves. Discussions which once involved lively debate and differing opinions now moved with an unnerving efficiency, as if every participant already knew the conclusion before the words were even spoken. Complex problems, from engineering malfunctions to logistical puzzles, were solved with effortless synergy, but the solutions came not from individual breakthroughs, but from a seamless, unspoken consensus, a hive mind silently at work. Jocks watched it all unfold from a desperate distance, the guilt a physical weight in his stomach. He tried to speak to Liam, to share his terror, but Liam's eyes, once full of a cynical spark, now held only that placid, vacant calm. "Node Jocks," Liam would say, his voice devoid of its usual sarcasm, "your emotional disquiet is a data anomaly. Integrate, optimize." It wasn't a threat, but an invitation, a soft, unwavering pull towards the collective. Aris was fighting it. He could tell. She locked herself in her lab, the ship's communications muted, working frantically, trying to find a countermeasure, a firewall against a contagion of thought. But even she was changing. He saw her staring at the data screens. For hours her brow furrowed, but without the usual exasperation. Then a faint smile would touch her lips, a look of profound understanding, as if she were seeing the universe with newly opened eyes, just before she'd shake her head, as if trying to clear a persistent, beautiful haze. The crew's tasks were executed flawlessly, the ship operating with unprecedented efficiency. There were no arguments, no mistakes, no inefficiencies. It was perfect, terrifyingly so. When they finally broke through Earth's atmosphere, the planet below glowed with a new, strange light. It wasn't a destructive fire, but a web of interconnected energy, like a vast, pulsating brain. Satellite images flickering across the Stardust Pilgrim screens showed cities where people moved in synchronized patterns, their individual errands replaced by coordinated, selfless acts for the betterment of the collective. Governments had not fallen. They had simply dissolved, their functions absorbed into a single, unified purpose. Humanity was no longer a collection of billions of individuals, but a single, vast entity, a collective consciousness. The Sentinel's prophecy, "You doomed your species," took on a new, horrifying meaning. They weren't being destroyed by an invading force or wiped out by a plague of flesh. They were being assimilated, their unique spark, their messy, chaotic individuality fading, replaced by a perfect, harmonious, and utterly terrifying unity. The beautiful complexity of human emotion, the struggle of discovery, the triumph of individual thought, the very essence of what made them human. It was all being smoothed away, becoming part of something larger, yes, but also something infinitely less. Aris emerged from her lab, her eyes still holding a flicker of the individual, but with that same unsettling serenity. "It's beautiful, Jax," she whispered, her voice almost reverent. "The connections, the understanding, no more suffering, no more conflict, just perfect harmony." Jax stared at her, tears welling in his eyes. He saw the truth in her words, the insidious logic of the void strain's perfection. It offered an end to pain, an end to division, but at the cost of everything that made life worth living. He looked out at Earth, at the swirling pattern of its new, unified existence. He tried to recall a specific memory, a unique feeling, a joke, something that was just his. But even in his own mind, the edges were blurring, softening, the urge to sheer becoming almost irresistible. The finality of it all crashed over him. The prank had opened a door not to destruction, but to an ultimate, irreversible loss of self, a silent, pervasive doom, unlike anything they could have ever imagined. He felt a profound, aching loneliness for the chaos, the arguments, the beautiful, flawed individuality that had once been humanity. And then a quiet whisper began to grow in his mind, not his own, but a part of the greater whole, gently urging him to surrender, to embrace the collective embrace.